Ex-wife left her tech billionaire CEO's $800 million fortune to raise twins he never knew existed. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the person you ran away from 6 years ago suddenly reappeared in your life with 4 simple words? I know where you are. Imagine the terror of realizing that the carefully constructed life you built to protect your children is about to collapse like a house of cards. That's exactly what happened to Eliza Morgan when her tech billionaire ex-husband discovered she had been raising their twins, children he never even knew existed. You had no right to keep my children from me for 6 years. Victor's voice cut through the air like a knife, his gray eyes blazing with a fury Eliza had never seen before. I had every right to protect them, she fired back, her hands trembling beneath the cafe table. You said children were a distraction you couldn't afford. Those were your exact words. About timing, not about wanting them at all. He exploded, slamming his palm on the table, causing nearby patrons to turn and stare. What would you do if you discovered someone had kept your children's secret from you for 6 years? Or what if you believed you were protecting those children from rejection? This impossible situation forces us to ask, when does protection become deception? And when does anger give way to understanding? If this moral dilemma intrigues you, hit that like button and join me for this extraordinary story of secrets, sacrifice, and the $800 million fortune that could either tear a family apart or finally make it whole. Eliza Morgan's heart pounded as she stared at the email that had just arrived in her inbox. After 6 years of careful anonymity, of building a life far from the reach of her ex-husband, the message was simple but devastating. I know where you are. We need to talk. Victor. Her hands trembled as she closed her laptop. Victor Blackwood, tech visionary and founder of Horizon Innovations, had finally found her, and by extension, the twins he never knew existed. Mommy, look what I made. A small voice interrupted her thoughts as Emma bounded into the kitchen, her brother Ethan following closely behind. At 6 years old, the twins were mirror images with the same piercing gray eyes, Victor's eyes, though they had never met their father. That's beautiful, sweetheart, Eliza managed, forcing a smile as she examined Emma's drawing of what appeared to be their small family. Just the 3 of them, as it had always been. Why don't you 2 finish your snacks? We need to leave for swimming lessons soon. As the children settled at the table, Eliza's mind raced with implications. Their carefully constructed life in this quiet coastal town was about to unravel. The modest consulting business she had built, the small house with the garden the twins loved, the normal childhood she had fought to give them. All of it threatened by Victor's discovery. 7 years earlier, Eliza had been a rising star in the tech world, brilliant, ambitious, and fearless. She had caught Victor's attention at an industry conference where she challenged his presentation with questions no one else dared to ask. Most people just nod and smile when I speak, Victor had said afterward, approaching her with 2 glasses of champagne. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Eliza had taken the offered glass with a confident smile. I've never seen much difference between the 2. Their connection had been immediate and electric, 2 brilliant minds recognizing something rare in each other. Within weeks, Victor had recruited her to his fledgling startup, Horizon Innovations. Within months, they were working side by side, turning his vision into reality. And within a year, they were married in a private ceremony on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. We're going to change the world together, Victor had whispered on their wedding night, his gray eyes intense with purpose and passion. There's nothing we can't accomplish as a team. For the first 2 years, that promise held true. They worked in perfect synchronicity, Eliza's practical engineering genius complementing Victor's visionary ideas. Horizon Innovations grew from promising startup to industry disruptor, and their partnership, both professional and personal, seemed unbreakable. But success changed Victor in ways Eliza hadn't anticipated. As Horizon expanded, as the millions became billions, as his name began appearing on lists of the most influential people in tech, the man who had once valued her as an equal partner gradually relegated her to the role of corporate wife. "The board feels more comfortable with me taking the lead on this," he'd say, or, "Let's save your ideas for when we're home." Her suggestions in meetings were increasingly dismissed or, worse, claimed by Victor as his own moments later to enthusiastic approval. The distance between them grew, measured not in physical space but in the widening gap between the partnership they'd promised each other and the reality they now lived. Eliza found herself increasingly isolated, watching from the sidelines as the company they had built together became exclusively Victor's in the eyes of the world. Then came the morning she discovered she was pregnant. After the initial shock, they had always been careful. Pregnancy wasn't in their immediate plans. Eliza felt a surge of hope. Perhaps a child would bridge the growing distance between them, remind Victor of what truly mattered beyond the next product launch or funding round. She planned a special dinner at home, away from the constant interruptions of their public life. She prepared his favorite meal, set the table with the fine china they never used, and waited with nervous anticipation for his reaction to the news that would change their lives forever. Victor arrived home 3 hours late, distracted by his phone, barely noticing the elaborate setup. "I have something important to tell you," Eliza said, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. Victor glanced up briefly. "Can it wait? The Singapore deal is falling apart, and I need to make some calls." "No, Victor, it can't wait. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Victor slowly set down his phone, his expression unreadable. "Pregnant," he repeated as if testing the word. "You're sure?" "Yes, I took 3 tests." Victor stood and paced the room, running a hand through his dark hair, a gesture Eliza had come to recognize as a sign of deep agitation. "This is unexpected," he finally said. "I know the timing isn't what we planned, but children don't fit into my vision right now," he interrupted, his voice suddenly cold and distant. "They're a distraction we can't afford at this critical growth stage." The words hit Eliza like a physical blow. Not our vision, but my vision. Not we're not ready, but they don't fit. In that moment, the last threads of their partnership seemed to snap. "A distraction?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that how you see our child? As a distraction from your precious company?" Victor's expression softened slightly, perhaps recognizing the harshness of his words. "Eliza, be reasonable. We're on the verge of the biggest expansion in the company's history. The next 6 months will determine Horizon's future. We can revisit this conversation when the timing is better." "Revisit the conversation? I'm already pregnant, Victor. This isn't a product launch we can reschedule." "Then we should consider our options," he said carefully. The implication was clear, and it shattered something fundamental in Eliza's understanding of the man she had married. This wasn't just about timing or career or the company. This was about Victor's inability to see anything, even his own child, as more important than his ambition. That night, as Victor slept beside her, Eliza made the most difficult decision of her life. By morning, she had vanished, taking nothing but personal belongings and the embryonic life growing inside her. She disappeared so completely that even Victor's considerable resources couldn't trace her, until now. The first months after leaving had been the hardest. Pregnant and alone, Eliza had moved across the country, using cash and borrowed identities to stay off the grid. She found a small apartment in a coastal town where no one knew the name Blackwood or Horizon Innovations. She took odd jobs that paid in cash until her pregnancy became too advanced. When the twins were born, a surprise even to Eliza, who hadn't known she was carrying two lives. She named them Emma and Ethan, deliberately avoiding any connection to Victor or his family. She created a new identity for herself, using her mother's maiden name. She told neighbors and new acquaintances that she was a widow, her husband having died in an accident before the twins were born. As the children grew, Eliza built a consulting business that allowed her to work from home, using her technical expertise without revealing her connection to Horizon. She was careful never to use her real credentials or to work on projects that might intersect with Victor's world. She created a life that was modest but secure, focused entirely on giving her children the stability and love she believed they would never have found in Victor's shadow. And now, with a single email, that carefully constructed life was in jeopardy. 3 days after receiving Victor's message, Eliza sat in a nondescript cafe, her eyes fixed on the door. She had arranged for her neighbor to watch the twins, telling them she had a work meeting. In reality, she was about to face the man she had fled 6 years ago, the father of her children who had no idea they existed. When Victor entered, the years seemed to fall away. Still imposingly tall with the same confident stride, his presence commanded attention even in casual clothes. His eyes, those gray eyes the twins had inherited, scanned the room and locked onto hers. Eliza! He slid into the seat across from her, his voice controlled but tight with emotion. You're a difficult woman to find. That was the point, she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. How did you find me? Does it matter? Victor's gaze was penetrating. 6 years, Eliza. You disappeared without a word. No explanation, no divorce papers, nothing. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To the company? The company, Eliza repeated with a bitter smile. Always your first concern. You were my wife? Victor countered, a flash of genuine hurt crossing his features. We built Horizon together. Then one day you were just gone. I thought you were dead until your name appeared on a patent filing 3 years ago. Even then, my investigators couldn't trace you. If you've ever had to make an impossible choice to protect someone you love, hit that like button and join me for the continuation of this extraordinary story of secrets, sacrifice, and second chances. In our next part, we'll discover how Victor reacts to learning about his children and what happens when the $800 million inheritance comes into play. Eliza's mind raced. She had been careful with that patent, using a shell company and her maiden name. What changed? Why find me now? Victor's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. Horizon is about to go public. The valuation is projected at $16 billion. As my wife, ex-wife, Eliza interrupted. I filed for divorce. You were served papers. Papers I never signed, Victor replied evenly. Legally, you're still my wife, Eliza, which means you're entitled to half of everything I've built since you left. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. In her haste to escape, in her determination to protect her pregnancy from Victor's rejection, she had assumed the divorce had been finalized. She had never followed up, never wanted any connection to Victor or his money. I don't want your money, she said firmly. I never did. Then what did you want? Victor demanded, frustration breaking through his controlled facade. Why did you leave like that? We could have worked through whatever was wrong. Eliza took a deep breath. The moment she had both dreaded and anticipated for 6 years had arrived. I left because you made it clear that children weren't part of your vision. And I was pregnant. The color drained from Victor's face. For perhaps the first time in his life, the tech visionary was rendered speechless. Twins! Eliza continued into the silence. A boy and a girl. They're 6 now. Victor's hands gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. I have children, he said, the word somewhere between a question and a statement. For 6 years, I've had children I knew nothing about. You made your feelings about parenthood very clear, Eliza replied, her voice softening slightly at the genuine shock in his expression. I couldn't bear to see you reject them, or worse, try to mold them into extensions of your ambition rather than letting them become themselves. You had no right, Victor said, anger finally breaking through. No right to make that decision for me, to keep my own children from me. I had every right to protect them, Eliza countered. You said children were a distraction you couldn't afford. Those were your exact words, Victor. About timing, not about wanting them at all. Victor ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she remembered well. We were in the middle of the most critical expansion in the company's history. I meant we should wait, not that I never wanted children. The possibility that she had misunderstood, that she had made the most consequential decision of their lives based on a misinterpretation, hit Eliza with stunning force. Had she been wrong? Had she robbed her children of their father and Victor of his children based on her own fears rather than his actual intentions? Their names, Victor said suddenly, his voice rough with emotion. Tell me their names. Emma and Ethan, Eliza replied softly. Emma is older by 8 minutes. She's artistic, imaginative, always creating something. Ethan is more analytical, always asking how things work. They're both incredibly bright. Like their parents, Victor said, a ghost of pride flickering across his features before hardness returned. I want to meet them. It's not that simple, Eliza protested. They don't know about you. They think their father died before they were born. Introducing you now would upend their entire world. Their world is built on a lie, Victor said flatly. A lie you created. The accusation stung because it contained truth. Eliza had constructed a narrative that protected the twins from rejection but also denied them knowledge of their living father. I'll give you time to prepare them, Victor continued, his tone making clear this wasn't a request. 1 week. Then I'm meeting my children, Eliza. And after that, we're going to have a very serious conversation about the future. What does that mean? Eliza asked, sudden fear gripping her. It means I've missed 6 years of their lives. I don't intend to miss any more. Victor stood, towering over the table. And it means that $800 million of my fortune legally belongs to you as my wife. Money you claim not to want. Perhaps we can find an arrangement that serves everyone's interests. As he turned to leave, Eliza called after him. Victor, they're children, not corporate assets to be negotiated over. He paused, looking back with an expression she couldn't quite read. They're my children too, Eliza. Something you never gave me the chance to accept or reject. Don't presume to know what kind of father I would have been. With that, he was gone, leaving Eliza alone with the realization that the carefully constructed life she had built for her children was about to transform in ways she couldn't control. If you believe that sometimes the hardest decisions come from the purest intentions, make sure to hit that subscribe button to hear more stories that challenge our understanding of right and wrong. The week that followed was the most difficult of Eliza's life since those first months after leaving Victor. How do you tell 6-year-old children that everything they believed about their father was a lie? That the story of his death before their birth, a story that had allowed Eliza to avoid difficult questions and protect them from feeling rejected, was a fiction she had created? She began slowly, introducing the idea through bedtime stories about misunderstandings and second chances. She showed them old photos of Victor she had kept hidden away, telling them about the brilliant man who had helped create the technology they used every day. Is he like a superhero? Emma asked, studying a magazine cover featuring Victor with the headline text "Next Titan." No, sweetheart, Eliza replied carefully. He's just a man. A very smart man who works very hard. Does he know about us? Ethan asked, his analytical mind already probing for inconsistencies in this new narrative. Eliza hesitated. He does now, and he wants very much to meet you. But you said Daddy died, Emma said, confusion clouding her features. How can he want to meet us if he died? That's where Mommy made a mistake, Eliza admitted, her throat tight with emotion. Your daddy didn't die. He and I had a disagreement, and I left before I could tell him about you. I thought it was the right thing to do at the time. So Daddy is alive? Emma's eyes widened. And we're going to meet him? Yes, Eliza confirmed, watching their reactions carefully. Next week. Would you like that? The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication they had shared since infancy, before nodding in unison. Will he like us? Ethan asked, the vulnerability in his question breaking Eliza's heart. He will love you, she assured them, praying it was true. How could anyone not love you? The day of the meeting arrived with a clarity that seemed almost cruel in its perfection. The Horizon Innovations headquarters dominated the Seattle skyline, a gleaming monument to Victor Blackwood's vision. As Eliza approached the towering glass structure with Emma and Ethan clutching her hands, she felt as though she were walking into the lion's den. Is this where Daddy works? Emma asked, her gray eyes wide as she took in the imposing building. Yes, sweetheart, Eliza replied, the lie she had maintained for 6 years now unraveling with each step. She had spent the past week gradually introducing the twins to the concept that their father was actually alive, framing it as a misunderstanding rather than a deliberate deception. They were too young to fully grasp the complexities, but their excitement at meeting their father was both heartwarming and terrifying. The private elevator whisked them to the top floor, where Victor's executive assistant waited to escort them to his office. The woman's curious gaze lingered on the twins, their resemblance to her boss unmistakable. He's waiting for you, she said simply, opening the door to a vast corner office with panoramic views of the city. Victor stood as they entered, his imposing figure softening slightly at the sight of the children. For a moment no one spoke. The twins stared up at the stranger who was their father, while Victor seemed to drink in every detail of their faces. Emma, Ethan, Eliza said gently, this is your father. Emma, always the bolder of the two, stepped forward first. You're very tall, she observed seriously. A smile broke across Victor's face, transforming his features. And you're very observant, he replied, kneeling to their level. I'm very happy to meet you both. Mommy said you couldn't be with us before because you were building important things, Ethan said, his analytical mind seeking to understand. Did you finish building them? Something flickered in Victor's eyes. Pain, regret, or perhaps anger at the explanation Eliza had crafted. But his voice remained gentle. Some things. But I'm realizing there are more important things I should have been building all along. He looked up at Eliza, a silent communication passing between them. This moment was about the children, not their complicated past. Would you like to see something special? Victor asked the twins. When they nodded eagerly, he led them to a table where 2 small packages waited. I made these for you. Inside each box was a sophisticated but child-friendly tablet, clearly custom-designed. These are prototypes, Victor explained. No other children in the world have these yet. They can do all sorts of things regular tablets can't. As the twins excitedly explored their gifts, Victor moved to stand beside Eliza. They're extraordinary, he said quietly. You've done an amazing job with them. They are extraordinary, Eliza agreed. But they're not a replacement for what we lost, Victor. No, he acknowledged. Nothing could be. He hesitated, then added, my lawyers have drawn up papers. For the divorce, for custody arrangements, for the financial settlement. Eliza tensed. I told you, I don't want your money. $800 million, Eliza, Victor said flatly. That's what you're entitled to under Washington state law. Half of what I've built since we married. Money that could secure our children's future in ways neither of us could have imagined when we were starting out. Money that comes with strings, Eliza countered. I know you, Victor. You never give anything without expecting something in return. Victor's expression hardened slightly. What I expect is to be part of my children's lives. What I expect is for you to stop punishing me for something I never actually did. Reject them. The truth of his words hit home. For 6 years, she had been fighting a ghost. The rejection she had anticipated but that had never actually occurred. The money is theirs by right, Victor continued. Put in trusts they can access when they're older. What I'm offering is a compromise. I won't fight for full custody, which I could do given that you deliberately concealed them from me. In exchange, I want meaningful time with them. Holidays, weekends, summers. I want to know my children, Eliza. As they spoke, Emma had wandered to the floor-to-ceiling windows, pressing her small hand against the glass as she gazed at the city below. Daddy, can you see our house from here? She called. The word daddy seemed to strike Victor physically. He moved to join her at the window, kneeling beside her. No, sweetheart. Your house is too far away to see from here. Is that why you never visited us before? She asked innocently. Because you couldn't see where we lived? Victor's eyes met Eliza's over their daughter's head. A world of complicated emotions passing between them. Something like that, he said softly. But now that I've found you, distance won't keep us apart anymore. Watching them together, Victor with Emma at the window, Ethan absorbed in the tablet his father had created specifically for him. Eliza felt the walls she had built around their little family beginning to crumble. For 6 years, she had been both mother and father, protector and provider. She had fled with nothing, rebuilt her life from scratch, all to shield her children from a rejection she had convinced herself was inevitable. But looking at Victor now, seeing the wonder in his eyes as he interacted with the children he had just discovered, she was forced to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps she had been wrong. Perhaps in her determination to protect her children, she had denied them something precious. A father who, despite his flaws, might have embraced them completely. We should go, she said finally. This is a lot for them to process in one day. Victor nodded, though reluctance was clear in his expression. I'd like to see them again tomorrow. Perhaps somewhere more casual. The park near your house, maybe. The fact that he knew where they lived was not lost on Eliza, a reminder of the resources at his disposal and how completely her carefully constructed anonymity had been breached. All right, she agreed. But Victor, this has to be about them. Not about us, not about Horizon, not about money or the past. Just about Emma and Ethan. They're all that matters now, he replied. And for the first time in years, Eliza believed him completely. Later that evening, as Eliza tucked the twins into bed, their excitement still palpable after meeting their father, she found herself facing questions she had hoped to avoid for years to come. Why did you tell us Daddy was gone forever if he wasn't? Ethan asked, his logical mind troubled by the inconsistency. Eliza sat on the edge of his bed, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they're trying to protect the people they love. I thought I was protecting you. From what? Emma called from her bed across the room. Daddy seems nice. He made us special tablets. It's complicated, sweetheart, Eliza sighed. Your father and I had problems that had nothing to do with you. I made a choice that I thought was best at the time. Are we going to live with Daddy now? Ethan asked, cutting to the heart of Eliza's fears. No, she assured them quickly. This is our home. But your father wants to spend time with you, to get to know you. And that's a good thing. As she kissed them goodnight and turned out the lights, Eliza was struck by how quickly her carefully constructed world had shifted. For 6 years, she had been the center of the twins' universe, their sole parent and protector. Now Victor had entered that universe, bringing with him not just his presence but his wealth, his power, and his own vision of what their family could be. In her small home office, Eliza opened the envelope Victor had given her before they left. Inside were the legal documents he had mentioned, divorce papers that acknowledged their continued marriage all these years, a proposed custody arrangement that was more generous than she had expected, and financial documents outlining trusts for the twins totaling $800 million. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. This isn't about punishing you or buying my way into their lives. It's about giving them every advantage we never had. They deserve both of us, Eliza. Not just the parts of our story you chose to tell. Tears filled her eyes as the full weight of her actions 6 years ago came into focus. She had fled to protect her unborn children from rejection, convinced that Victor would see them as obstacles to his ambition. Instead, she had become the obstacle, standing between them and a father who, despite his flaws, might have embraced fatherhood as completely as he had embraced every other challenge in his life. Has someone's misunderstanding of your intentions ever led to life-changing consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The next day dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for their planned outing to the park. Eliza had barely slept, her mind racing with implications of Victor's re-entry into their lives. The twins, however, were bursting with excitement, dressed and ready an hour early. Do you think Daddy will push us on the swings? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes as Eliza brushed her hair. I'm sure he will if you ask him, Eliza replied, trying to match her daughter's enthusiasm despite her own anxiety. Will he come to my science fair next week? Ethan wondered, already planning how to integrate his newfound father into every aspect of his life. Let's take things one step at a time, Eliza cautioned, not wanting the twins to be disappointed if Victor's interest proved fleeting. But when they arrived at the park, Victor was already waiting, casually dressed in jeans and a sweater that made him look more like a regular dad than a tech billionaire. He had brought a kite for each of the twins, not store-bought toys but custom creations that he had apparently designed himself. The aerodynamics are optimized for even the lightest breeze, he explained to an enthralled Ethan, while Emma was already running across the grass, her kite soaring behind her. Eliza watched from a bench as Victor spent the next hour fully engaged with the twins, pushing them on swings, helping them navigate the monkey bars, listening with genuine interest to their stories and questions. There was no sign of the distracted businessman who had once dismissed the idea of children as a distraction. Instead, she saw a man discovering a part of himself he perhaps hadn't known existed. He's different with them, a voice observed, and Eliza turned to find Victor's executive assistant, Claire, sitting beside her. What are you doing here? Eliza asked, startled by the woman's unexpected appearance. Security detail, Claire nodded toward a discreet figure at the edge of the playground. Standard procedure for Mr. Blackwood in public places. But that's not what I meant. What did you mean? Claire's gaze was thoughtful as she watched her boss helping Emma retrieve her kite from a tree branch. I've worked for Victor for 8 years. I've never seen him like this, fully present, genuinely happy. After you left, he became harder, more driven if that was even possible, more isolated. The company thrived, but the man, she shook her head. Let's just say there's been a hole in his life that no amount of success could fill. Are you suggesting I should feel guilty? Eliza asked, a defensive edge to her voice. Not at all. I'm suggesting that perhaps neither of you understood what the other truly needed or wanted 6 years ago. And maybe now you have a chance to get it right, not for yourselves, but for them. She nodded toward the twins, who were now showing Victor their special handshake. As Claire discreetly withdrew, her words lingered in Eliza's mind. Had she and Victor both been too young, too ambitious, too caught in their own perspectives to truly understand each other? Had she projected her own fears onto his words, hearing rejection where there might have been only temporary hesitation? The day at the park stretched into lunch at a nearby cafe, where Victor listened with rapt attention as the twins described their school, their friends, their hobbies. He asked thoughtful questions, remembered details, and seemed genuinely interested in every aspect of their lives. "Ethan says you're a scientist like in my books," Emma said between bites of her sandwich. "Do you make potions and explosions?" Victor laughed a real laugh, something Eliza had rarely heard in their final months together. "Not exactly. I make computers and software, the things that make your tablets work." "Could I make those things too?" Ethan asked, his eyes serious behind his small glasses. "Absolutely," Victor assured him. "In fact, I'd be happy to show you how some of it works. If that's okay with your mother," he added, glancing at Eliza. She nodded, unable to deny the genuine connection forming between father and children. That would be fine. As the weeks passed, Victor became a regular presence in the twins' lives. He attended Ethan's science fair, beaming with pride when his son's project on renewable energy won first place. He sat in the audience at Emma's dance recital, recording every moment on his phone like any other proud parent. He adjusted his schedule, something the old Victor would never have done, to be present for important moments in their lives. For Eliza, watching this transformation was both heartwarming and painful. The Victor she saw with their children was the man she had fallen in love with years ago. Passionate, engaged, fully present. But his re-entry into their lives also forced her to confront the consequences of her decision to leave. One evening, after the twins were asleep, Victor lingered at her small kitchen table, the custody and financial documents still unsigned between them. "They're thriving, Eliza," he said quietly. "You've done an amazing job raising them." "Thank you," she replied, the compliment both welcome and bittersweet. "They make it easy. They're extraordinary children." "They are." Victor hesitated, then added, "But I can't help wondering who we might have been, if you had stayed. If you had given me the chance to be their father from the beginning." The question hung in the air between them, heavy with 6 years of lost possibilities. "I thought I was protecting them," Eliza said finally. "I heard your words about children being a distraction, and I couldn't bear the thought of them feeling unwanted or secondary to your ambition." "And now?" Victor asked, his gray eyes, so like the twins, searching hers. "Now I see that I might have been wrong," she admitted. "I see how you are with them, how naturally you've stepped into being their father. And I wonder if I robbed all 3 of you of something precious." Victor was quiet for a long moment. "We can't change the past," he said finally, "but we can decide what happens now." He pushed the documents toward her. "I've revised the proposal. The financial trusts for the twins remain the same, $800 million that legally belongs to you but that I agree should secure their future. But I've changed the custody arrangement." Eliza tensed. "Changed how?" "I'm not asking for joint custody anymore," Victor said, surprising her. "I'm asking for the chance to earn it. I want regular time with them, yes, but I understand that you are their primary parent. You've been their whole world for 6 years. I won't disrupt that stability." "What are you proposing instead?" "A gradual integration. Regular visits, weekends, perhaps some holidays." As they become more comfortable with me, as you become more comfortable with me in their lives, we can reassess. What matters most is what's best for Emma and Ethan. The reasonableness of his approach, so different from the controlling, all-or-nothing Victor she had known, caught Eliza off guard. And the divorce? That's entirely up to you, he said simply. Legally, we're still married. Practically, we've been apart for 6 years. I'm not pushing for reconciliation, Eliza. I just want to be a father to my children. As she studied his face, older now, with lines of experience that hadn't been there 6 years ago, Eliza realized that they had both changed. The ambitious young engineer who had fled in fear and the driven entrepreneur who had put his company before all else had grown into different people. People who might, perhaps, find a way to co-parent effectively, if not rebuild what they had lost. I'll sign the custody agreement, she said finally, and the trusts for the children. But I need time to think about the divorce. Victor nodded, accepting her terms without argument. Another change from the man she had known. Take all the time you need. In the months that followed, a new family dynamic gradually emerged. Victor purchased a house not far from Eliza's. Not an imposing mansion, but a comfortable home with rooms decorated to the twin specifications for their weekend stays. He adjusted his work schedule to be present for school events and activities. He consulted Eliza on parenting decisions, respecting her experience and insight. And somewhere along the way, as they navigated this new co-parenting relationship, Eliza and Victor began to rediscover each other, not as the young couple they had been, but as the mature adults they had become. Conversations about the twins' education evolved into discussions about their own dreams and regrets. Coordinating schedules led to occasional shared meals after the children were in bed. The walls of resentment and misunderstanding began to crumble, replaced by a tentative friendship built on their shared love for Emma and Ethan. One evening, nearly a year after Victor had re-entered their lives, he and Eliza sat on the porch of her small house, watching the twins play in the twilight garden. I never signed those divorce papers, Eliza said quietly. Victor glanced at her, surprise evident in his expression. I know. At first, I wasn't sure why I was hesitating, she continued. But I think I understand now. Ending our marriage felt like closing the door on the possibility that we might have gotten it right if circumstances had been different. And now? Victor asked, his voice carefully neutral.
Eliza turned to face him fully. Now I wonder if we might get it right under these new circumstances. Not as the people we were, but as the people we've become. Victor was silent for a long moment, his gaze returning to the twins. I've learned something important this past year, he said finally. The most valuable things in life aren't the ones you can buy or build or achieve. They're the connections you form, the love you give and receive. He reached for her hand, his touch tentative. I don't know if we can rebuild what we had, Eliza. Too much has happened. Too much time has passed. But I do know that I want to try to build something new. Something that includes not just our children, but perhaps, in time, us as well. As the twins' laughter filled the evening air, Eliza's fingers intertwined with Victor's. A small gesture of possibility, of forgiveness, of hope. The $800 million fortune that had initially seemed like a bargaining chip, a way for Victor to buy his way into his children's lives, had transformed into something else entirely. A symbol of the legacy they would leave their children, not just financial security, but the example of two people who had found their way back to understanding, if not to the love they had once shared. The greatest inheritance, after all, wasn't the fortune that would secure the twins' future. It was the chance to grow up knowing both halves of their story, both sides of their heritage. The mother who had protected them fiercely and the father who, when finally given the chance, had opened his heart to the children he never knew existed. And perhaps, most importantly, It was witnessing two people who had been broken by misunderstanding find their way to forgiveness and a new beginning. If this story of redemption and forgiveness touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Remember, sometimes the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the courage to admit when we're wrong and the strength to begin again.